Hello everyone, and welcome to the config and tech video for Fatal Frame 1. Let me get my notes open, and PC SX2 nightly version 1.7.5416. So we'll have this over here. In this video, we will be setting up Fatal Frame 1, general settings and advanced where needed. This will hopefully put the game in the best playable state it can be. I have a lot to cover, so you can expect this video to be pretty in-depth and on the longer side. This video is intended for technical advice and education. I will not be providing ROM links of any kind in this video, so don't ask. Some playthrough information. I have this game on my PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3. But I don't have a capture card set up to record it. We'll be covering the PC SX2 version on PC. I'm not going to be covering all of the PC SX2 options, as I want to focus on the specific settings that need adjustment for Fatal Frame 1. Keep in mind that I've not played through the game yet using PC SX2. I've only tested the first intro area for playability. So any issues we may encounter in the playthrough, I will try to address as they happen. Most games will only have minor issues generally. Program information here. The link will be in the description of this video. You will need to download the PC SX2 program. You'll have the option to download either a stable version or a nightly version. Nightly versions are more up-to-date, but not fully 100% stable yet. That being said, use the nightly version for the best results. The majority of issues are resolved using the nightly version. I played this on nightly version 1.7.5416 build. Setup information and configuration. Now I would like to cover the issues the game has on PC SX2, at least the ones I know about and the adjustments I made. We will talk about them here, and then I will show you in PC SX2 the adjustments to make based on what was discussed. Understand that these are not fixes that I devised. I'm breaking down the information already provided from the wiki in most cases, in the hopes of saving others time from testing and trial and error. So all credit goes to those people and their fixes. Keep in mind, a lot of these issues have been addressed in current versions of PC SX2 as well. I still want to address them because the information may be helpful. I also advise you to take note that in PC SX2, you can press your F9 key to switch between software mode and hardware mode. This keybind allows you to switch between the two modes actively, allowing you to temporarily fix issues or get past them. This keybind can be changed in the hotkeys settings of PC SX2. Hardware mode. This mode is preferable to use as it should get you the best quality. The main reason being able to upscale the resolution in PC SX2. It can cause graphical defects depending on the game being played. Usually these are bearable or fixable, but sometimes they are not. Software mode. This mode is more stable, but will not allow for upscaling the resolution. It will also disable other graphical improvements of PC SX2. I recommend you use hardware mode and try to work through the issues it may cause. The game will look a lot better with the ability to upscale in PC SX2. In situations that arise, I may actively utilize the F9 keybind myself, depending on what happens. I may also switch completely to software mode if I have to as a last resort. So now getting directly to the issues here at hand. Get my cursor down here. So we'll start with widescreen versus standard. I wanted to explain how this will work for this game, as each game will be different. After some testing, this is what I came up with. Widescreen gameplay does work correctly as far as aspect proportions, given you select 16 by 9 mode and also enable widescreen patches. Not using the patch option will stretch the gameplay. The FMV full motion video cutscenes remain standard 4:3, even when set to widescreen 16 by 9. This makes sense as they are pre-rendered cutscenes and the PlayStation 2 was designed around a standard 4:3 support. Some games supported widescreen, but most did not. The negative to all this is that the GUI, or the graphical user interface, is slightly stretched widthwise. This includes things like the inventory screen, item pickup screens, and your camera reticle, which will look oval instead of circular. This can happen when trying to make the gameplay look like proper widescreen. When it comes to a lot of GUIs in games, they are baked in, I think that is the term. So they won't properly scale with whatever magic PCSX2 is doing to get the proper aspect of the gameplay. Usually I don't like stretching any part of a game's visuals. A game that is locked at 4:3 is always going to look worse forced into 16:9 by simply stretching it widthwise. Since this only seems to affect the GUI in this game, I'm mostly okay about it. The next thing here is missing lens flare effect, active. The lens flare effect from your flashlight might be missing in some areas. Use your F9 key to switch between hardware mode and software mode can resolve this. Flickering blood textures on windows, active. This can occur in the courtyard area of the game. It is less noticeable in software mode, but not completely gone. Hardware mode causes darker camera, active. Hardware mode causes the viewport mode of the camera to look slightly darker, possibly making it harder to see the game environment for some people. This game is pretty dark in general, but it shouldn't affect actual gameplay too much. I will adjust brightness during editing if needed for viewers on YouTube. You would have to use software mode to avoid this completely. Hardware mode causes more camera noise, active. When you are using the viewport mode of your camera, there is this weird effect you see that is overlaid onto the lens of the camera. It's sort of a film grain noise effect. I guess because you're looking through an old camera. This is not something that can be turned off, sadly, and I guess PCSX2 doesn't have a means of removing it either. When using hardware mode, this effect will become more prominent. The upscaling of the resolution may also attribute to the clarity of this effect. It's not an emulation issue, it's like this in the original game. It's just it didn't look good then and it doesn't look good now, but it's not removable. And the next thing, this is making hardware mode look like a really bad thing, isn't it? Just going into detail so you know your options here. Hardware mode causes FMV artifacts, active. In testing, I've noticed some FMV full motion video cutscenes will have a white line on the edge of the screen. It's a minor thing, but visually noticeable. And I think I might have fixed it by the settings I'm going to be describing to you in this video. So it may or may not be there anyway, but I did notice it at some point in my testing. Okay, upscaling causes black lines on photos, fixed. Vertical black lines on photos using DirectX 11. AMD and Intel GPU should be okay. NVIDIA users should use the native resolution or disable safe features. I could not find this disable safe features, so hopefully it is just fixed. as I plan to use DirectX 11 and an NVIDIA GPU and upscale my textures. We'll deal with it if it shows up in the photos. On a side note, I encountered black lines right away on the title screen. This was due to having anisotropic filtering on in my settings of PCSX2. So make sure you turn that setting off to default for this game. And you might want to leave it off for any other game in the future, just to maybe hopefully avoid, texture glitches. Black lines on special effects / ghost faces fixed. You may need to set internal resolution to native. It may just be fixed as it says that it is. Turn anisotropic filtering to off default, and the settings may fix this as well, since it's another black line related issue. Next thing, lighting glitch fixed. A texture lighting glitch on the door leading to the Buddha statues. Use your F9 key to switch between hardware mode and software mode. Can resolve this. Out of sync skybox fixed. When spinning around, the sky rotates out of sync. It is stated that this is resolved in the newest version of PCSX2. Negative FMV corrupted. There is an FMV full motion video that happens when you pick up 4 stones. I'm assuming this means it displays in a negative color state. It is stated that this is resolved in the newest version of PCSX2. Camera doesn't focus on ghosts. Fixed. It is not possible to target ghosts to take pictures. It is stated that this is resolved in the newest version of PCSX2. And per my testing for playing this series, I encountered the game's first ghost and I did not have any problem dealing with him, so hopefully the rest will be okay. Ghosts are difficult to target. Fixed. It seems like a duplicate issue listing to me, so moving on. Invisible ghosts fixed. Some ghosts can be invisible in hardware mode. Sounds like the invisible enemy mode in Resident Evil 1 Remake that you unlock. Use your F9 key to switch between hardware mode and software mode. Can resolve this. The wiki says this is fixed, so I'm hoping that means it's okay to use hardware mode. If not, that could definitely become an issue later. So I may end up dying at some point in the gameplay just because an invisible ghost kills me until I realize I need to use software mode for that encounter or something, but hopefully everything will work. Freeze at final boss. When fighting the boss in viewfinder mode, the game can just freeze. This is a known glitch that can happen on real PlayStation 2 hardware. I've never personally had this happen to me. Fighting the boss near the door entrance to the room is supposed to be the best place to avoid this glitch. In case the freeze glitch does happen, before fighting this boss, make sure you save in the game and use quick saves if using PCSX2. In general, we will be using the following. Hardware mode, DirectX 11 for upscaling option. And then upscaling the resolution from PlayStation 2 native, which would be 480i, to 1080p. And then using widescreen mode, 16:9 for gameplay not stretched. And what I mean by that is not stretched where it's just stretching the image widthwise, not proportionately. This will be stretching it, to fit the 16:9 aspect ratio, but everything is going to be uniformly presented. And then 16:9 GUI or graphical user interface. This will be slightly stretched in my playthrough. And there's nothing I can really do about it. So, and then 4:3 for the FMV cutscenes. So with all of that out of the way, let's go into PCSX2 briefly, and I will visually show you what we've discussed now that you have an idea of what needs adjusting. Okay, so looking over here now to PCSX2, you'll see I have an image here for the game. You can just double click this and we'll start the game. When you first run PCSX2, you'll have a little box and I think a link or something prompting you to set or search a directory for your games. So when you do that, you'll have a bunch of these pop up. They'll be blank and empty. And you can resize with the slider here. You can make it like super tiny, you can make it super massive big. I just made it big for the purpose of this video to have something over here during all the time I was talking. Once you get it in here, there's a few things you can do. It may not be named correctly. If you right click it, you can go to properties and you can rename it from there, and then you can also go to set cover image and search out an image that you get online and apply it to the game, and then it will have an image and a proper name. See, I might as well maximize this since we're talking about it now. So you'll have settings over here. This has the complete list of settings, because if you go to System and Settings here, it opens up another window which we're going to be going into, but it will not list settings like hotkeys, which is where you would need to go. So if you go into hotkeys and you go down here, where is it? I may have changed it. I think I did, yeah. I changed the F9 key that I mentioned to you to toggle software rendering mode and back to hardware. It should be F9 for you, but I've changed it to my number pad 1 key because that's where I want it. But this is where you would need to go to change that keybind or verify that it's even, it should be there by default, but this is how you would do keybind changes on that. So the setting tab up here has the complete list of all of them. This is where you can add game directories so that things will show up here. And then you can kind of get a library going, you know, of visual games that you can just run. Like I said, don't forget you can right click each game and it has its own properties that you can adjust and do things. So like when you start, you don't have to start from the title screen. You can load from, you know, a save state. You know, if that's the most if it's more recent than maybe an actual hard save you've made in the game, you know, you can just start the game directly that way. But anyway, what I want to get into here is we're going to go into System and Settings, and you're going to have a bunch of options over here. The main two categories over here I'm going to cover is Interface, which we are already on, and Graphics. I do advise you to go through every one of these and look at all of the things that are presented on these categories and configure them accordingly. You know, if you have to do a Google search, do a Google search. The better you configure things, especially, you know, I'm sure a lot of people set these things up and then never touch them again, or, you know, unless they have to. So however you set things up here is most likely how you're going to leave them. So best to do it right the first time. But I want to go over stuff here in the interface a little bit because there's a few important options. A lot of these will be on by default. Some may not. Most of these will be. But confirm shutdown, it gives you little description boxes down at the bottom, and it even tells you recommended value checked. Determines whether a prompt will be displayed to confirm shutting down the virtual machine when the hotkey is pressed, or when just trying to close the game. It keeps you from accidentally doing like escape, pressing escape or something on the keyboard or something like that, and it just shutting your game down. It gives you a confirmation box first. That way you don't accidentally do it. So it's a good kind of safety measure. Creates save state backups is handy. That's probably already on. Yep. Recommended value. Start full screen. They're recommending unchecked, but you know, once you get everything set up and you're gonna play your game, save, stop, come back the next day, play your game, save and stop, and repeat and repeat. You're going to want it to go into full screen mode immediately. So even though it's recommended unchecked, I would say check it. Double click toggles full screen. That way you can just choose to double left mouse click the screen to window mode or full screen mode the game, which is easy. And usually if you can't do that, you can press Alt, Enter, the right Alt and Enter together, or like Alt and then Enter, Alt plus Enter, and that will usually window mode or full screen most applications or games. But double clicking is easier. Hide cursor in full screen is handy just to get the cursor out of the way. And it works, and sometimes it doesn't work. So I'm also going to be using an auto hotkey script that I've got working to, once I leave my mouse cursor still on the screen, it's set to automatically hide it in like 5 seconds or something. Of course, if I jiggle it again, it'll become visible, but I'm going to be using that on top of whatever this is doing, because this is not, and its recommended value is unchecked, but, you know, I don't want to see a cursor on the screen when I'm using a gamepad to control it, the game, you know, so hopefully it'll be hidden. If not by the PCSX2, by my backup of having a auto hotkey script running in the background to hide my mouse for me. I just do that generally in emulators to be safe, you know, because I don't want it to pop up or just show, you know, in my recordings or in just normal gameplay. Moving on, next is preferences, languages. Select your language. Default's going to give you English. Theme, there's a lot of theme options here, which is super cool. I'm really glad to see, and I commend PCSX2's developers for including modes like this dark fusion that I'm using. I'm someone that suffers pretty extensively with migraines in real life, on the regular, on the daily, and I don't like looking, and I'm on the computer a lot, all the time, so I don't like, you know, you look at, for example, you know, Microsoft Paint or Notepad always comes to mind, you know, those are blinding, you know, retina piercing, off the scale white, you know, background programs. And I've always hated that, and I've always tried ways and methods to make them darker, because I just need that for my eyes and my migraines and stuff. So I commend the developers for including, you know, dark modes and different options. There's all kinds of cool stuff here. Like, that's crazy right there. I wouldn't use that. I love cobalt blue, but that's crazy. So there's different options. Here's the native. So, damn. See, that's what I'm talking about right there. I can't handle that. I just can't. What's blue dark look like? Okay, it just makes the selecting category that you're in blue. It's kind of cool, I guess. Let's leave it on blue for now, because we're getting crazy today. We're going to be using blue. Get some color in our videos here. And then the last section here is updates, and update channel. Leave it on nightly, but I think I downloaded the nightly I downloaded the nightly version, and you should too, and it's automatically on nightly, but it appears that you can switch back to the stable version without re-downloading the stable version, I guess is what this means. But I advise to get the nightly version, which we have, and it will say up here, nightly. Tell you the version. Make sure your version is at least this or newer than mine. If it's older, I suggest you update, or what I am explaining for you to do for these fixes and whatnot may not work. So leave it on the nightly channel, and then you can see the version here again and confirm, and enable automatic update check. So when you run the application PCSX2, it'll automatically check, and it seems like this program is heavily updated. I'm kind of guessing the way it's working is there's probably a group of people, 10, maybe even more, and they are developers for this or have developing privileges, and they all just are kind of in a group that allow each other to contribute to the project. And at any time, they can just push an update if they want to, and that's cool and great. And just about every time you launch this, you're going to get an update, even if it's the same day. You shut it down and you pick it back up 8 hours later and play something again, it'll probably have a fresh update for you. So always get the updates. I always recommend getting the updates. I've shied away from nightly builds. I didn't even know what a nightly build was until recently with some other stuff. I think for Resident Evil games, I think. Yeah, Resident Evil 2 remake with the RE framework mod. That has nightly builds, and I finally learned what nightly means. Just means that, you know, as opposed to the stable, maybe updated every couple of months or something build, it's a nightly build, meaning nightly there could be additions and updates, you know, like little ninja updates that they're sneaking in. So always take the most up-to-date version and use the nightly build as my suggestion for anything that you're using with your games, even if it's not this software, if it's other software like RE Framework, you know, things like that. So it'll automatically check when you run it, and you can manually check here. And when you click it, it'll just kick out real quick and it'll do it, or it'll tell you there's nothing and there hasn't been anything else yet, and then it will go back into the menu. So I just wanted to cover that because a lot of these settings are kind of, you know, can be helpful, and just go through everything. Please go through everything here. I don't want to do everything here right now because I'm still a little hazy and fuzzy on the legalities of being able to even talk about how to use an emulator in your YouTube videos, so I'm trying to be a little sparse with it. But if I do go through everything, I want to do a dedicated video to it. If there's interest, if anybody out there watches this and enjoys it, please subscribe and let me know in the comments. I'd appreciate it. Keeps me motivated to keep doing this. But yeah, if there's interest for people for me to do dedicated videos on, like, you know, how to set up and use Reshade, or how to set up and use, you know, PCSX2, or, you know, MAME or something like that, you know, I'm interested in doing it, and I can. I'm just not sure about it, and if there's not an interest, I'm not going to push it. You know what I'm saying? So that'll cover this, but go through everything here yourself. Make educated guesses, research it. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you're experienced with gaming and this kind of stuff with PC, you know, modder, if you're a mod user, you're probably going to get this stuff pretty easily. So graphics, that's what I want to touch on next here. This has the meat of the setup in PCSX2, and the most important settings are contained here. The first thing you will be encountered with is render, and you'll probably be on automatic default, and automatic default is software mode, which is fine for that to be the default, but it's not necessarily the best. Hardware mode is going to be basically anything else. Null means nothing. I mean, I don't know how you can even play it if you don't have a renderer selected, but software would be the default, or automatic default, or software. And then Vulkan, OpenGL, Direct3D, which is DirectX 11 or DirectX 12. And I'm opting in this playthrough to use hardware mode, which has already been discussed. And I'm going to pick 11 over 12 simply because 11 is still technically more widely used and stable, and just stable. That's the main thing. Hopefully to cause less crashing, better frame rate, better resource usage, you know, of your GPU and CPU and memory and all that good stuff, you know, while you're playing the game. 12 is arguably better, and if you're playing a state-of-the-art game on a state-of-the-art graphics card, then yeah, I suggest you pick 12. But also remember how long DirectX 11 has been out and how long 12 has been out, and that we're talking about games here that were made on the PlayStation 2, which came out in the early, you know, 2000s. So I advise DirectX 3D, DirectX 11. Adapter is going to be whatever graphics card you have. Just make sure it's not on Microsoft Basic Renderer driver. Use whatever your card is, and this is my graphics card. So, and then next you'll have 6 category or tabs here, starting with display. My television is a 1920 1080p 60 hertz television for 60 FPS. So that's my resolution I'm picking. You can go borderless full screen, 640, 480, and I'm assuming if your television or monitor is capable of a higher resolution, you'll have a higher choice here to pick from. But whatever you pick, make sure it matches up what it is. Like, if you have a 1920 by 1080p television, you probably don't want to pick 23.97 as your hertz, because then that'll put your frame rate at 23.97 FPS. So make sure you pick 60 at least. Next category is aspect ratio. Make sure you switch this from whatever it may be on, which I think is auto standard 4:3 interlaced, which would be correct for the standard display, but since we are using a proper widescreen patch, you need to also make sure you put the aspect ratio on widescreen, so put that on that. Same thing with full motion cutscene aspect ratio. You need to put that on the same setting as well. These should all be defaults. That says default. I didn't change any of these, I don't believe. They should be as they are. I did switch this from, I think, PNG to JPEG just because I prefer JPEG. And then that should be normal. This should be normal. This should say default. It may say 0. That's what you want it to be. And then out of these 8 boxes, I have the first 3 checked. The first one being enable the widescreen patch. This is mandatory if using widescreen mode. If you want to play an old school 4:3, go for it, man. I mean, I'm not going to tell you it's wrong because it ain't. It's correct. But you can also play it correctly, for the most part, minus the graphical user interface stretch using widescreen. But if you want to play it in 4:3 mode, you can. And if you do, make sure you put this on standard 4:3 for both, or mess around with this auto standard 4:3 interlaced. This may be closer. I think this is supposed to be closer to what it would have been on an actual TV. But you could do, 4:3 on both that way, and then uncheck this. Don't use this. But we are using widescreen. So make sure this is checked. Automatically loads and applies widescreen patches on game start. Can cause issues. Recommended value unchecked. So that's for playability and compatibility issues and all that, but you need this checked per my instructions for what we're trying to achieve. And I also, this says recommended value checked, but I recommend you use anti-blur. Will just help sharpen the image a little bit more, because PlayStation 2 games were very blurry back in the day. That blurriness was because PlayStation 1 games were even blurrier. So in PlayStation 2 era, they were trying to use more anti-aliasing to kind of dull, blur, or smear the graphics a little bit, to hide all the jaggedness and make it look more, higher resolution than it actually was. So use anti-blur, and if you have a G-Sync monitor, as I've read and heard through the grapevine, I don't have one yet, that those particular monitors and televisions basically have V-Sync automatically applied, blocking what you're watching to your frame rate and eliminating any screen tearing in the process. That may be true, and I hope it is, but I don't have a G-Sync monitor. I have an old school 43-inch Vizio, I think it's a D series, it may be an E series, LCD, 1080p, 60 hertz, 60 FPS television. I haven't upgraded to the 4K realm yet, but I will next, next replacement of electronics, when I upgrade to a new computer and whatnot. At that point, I'll probably be getting into 4K. I end up getting into the technical advancements a little late. 4K's been around forever now. It's basically the standard in gaming. It's just not the standard in television yet. But I have not converted over to it yet. So I always advise to check VSync otherwise, even though this says uncheck. It says enable this option to match PCX2's refresh rate with your current monitor or screen. VSync is automatically disabled when it is not possible. Example, running at non 100% speed. Okay. But the thing is with this, if you don't have a G-Sync monitor and you leave this unchecked, one, you'll get screen tearing, and I advise you to go to the Wikipedia page. Just type in screen tearing video game Wikipedia. You'll get a description and some examples. I think I've even in some of my videos given examples of what it looks like. So you can learn about it, but you can see what it causes. It basically causes a tear, this weird kind of horizontal tear in the image when you move around in the game. And it looks bad. It cuts up the image of your game video. So it does that, and it also will cause your frame rate to exceed past the point of what you need. So if you have a 60 Hz screen, you only need 60 FPS. You don't need 120 or 5,000. You don't need to make your card push more frames than you need based on your television's hertz. So there's that. And the other side of the coin of that too is a lot of speedrunners will say, well, when you do put VSync on and lock that down, you cause input lag, meaning, you know, when you press a mouse button, a keyboard button, or a gamepad button, there's a slight delay in everything. And this can be true, and I don't technically think I've really had much problem in experiencing that all the time and all the years I've used VSync, but I'm also not really a speedrunner, so I've only speedran one game in my life, and it was pretty recently. Like last year, I think, actually. Yeah, it was last year. So I can understand it from that perspective, but I'm not a speedrunner, so I'd rather not have screen tearing and have my frame rate match my hertz on my screen. So anyway, that's a long explanation on that. I do advise you to have these three checked. These other things, you know, these are just things you need to play with, basically. Each game, you kind of would need to mess with them if there's a visual issue. You know, turn things on, turn things off, you know, test, repeat, you know, until you fix something. So let's get on the next category here. The next category, so this here should get you, you know, in the display tab, this should get you a good baseline, all right? So the rendering tab here, here you can choose to either set it at native PlayStation 2 default, which is basically 480i resolution, 640 by 480i. Let's look there. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what it would have been, 640 by 480i, with some games allowing you to, I think, do 720. God of War being one of them, had the progressive scan mode. But yeah, that would have been how low the resolution would have been. That's what the native means. But I'm choosing to upscale, which I'm doing 3 times the native up to 1080p because that's what I'm recording in. I could very well, and you definitely can, do 2K, 4K if you choose to. I'm just choosing not to. Because I kind of thought later it's not really going to matter that much considering the quality, graphical quality of a PlayStation 2 game anyway. And I don't really want to add any, I don't want to add, you know, data size to my video that I'm making and all that and everything by doing it in 4K. So I'm choosing just to do 3 times. And remember, this is only possible if you are using the renderer that's hardware. See, if you do software, all that goes away. This is all you get to adjust if you're only using software mode. So this will make, and it does make a very noticeable effect. It doesn't make it perfect and like it's HD or anything, you know, but it supremely cleans up everything in the game. Gets rid of a good portion of the anti-aliasing the game has. It makes character models look better and cleaner. Character models already look pretty good, especially in the cutscenes. Cutscenes look pretty good in this game. But it really cleans up the image textures extremely. Upscaling is really freaking awesome for modern gaming and, you know, retro modern gaming. It says control the resolution at which games are rendered. Higher resolutions can impact performance on older, lower-end GPUs. Non-native resolution may cause minor graphical issues in some games. FMV resolution will remain unchanged as the video files are pre-rendered. So that's important to remember. This is not talking about whether that FMV cutscene is 4:3 or 16:9. It's talking about whether the quality of that video is upscaled. And PCSX2 does not upscale pre-rendered cutscenes like that. It's only upscaling, you know, the actual game itself, the gameplay. So keep that into account. If you're wondering, like, well, I'm upscaling my game, why do my cutscenes not look better? You know, it's because of that, because they're pre-rendered. If they're in-game cutscenes, then they'll be upscaled. So automatic default on bitmap, I didn't change that. I didn't change the texture filtering, it should be the same. Automatic default, anisotropic filtering, this is very important, especially for this game. I had this on 16x from the last game, which was God of War 1 that I played through here, which I didn't notice this problem in that game, but I may from here on out leave this off myself and suggest that you do too, even though it can increase graphic quality, but it can, now that I realize with this game, easily cause texture problems. So I had this on 16x, and this caused immediately for me black lines to appear in the texture of the title screen when you first start the game. I didn't even have to get into the game and I could see there was texture problems. So make sure this is off, which will be on by default. Dithering upscale default, I left this alone. Blending accuracy, basic recommended, left that on, recommended. Some people will tell you to put this on medium or high to fix some issues maybe a game has, maybe with frame rate issues or something. If you bump this up to medium or high, it can help frame rate. I think that's what I read. Texture preloading full, hash, cache, or cache. Is that what people say? I always say cache, like money cache, but most everybody else likes to say it's cache. So I finally had to say that word in one of my videos. So that's default. These are unchecked by default. So yeah, basically decide if you want to use the old school, muddy, you know, native resolution, or you want to upscale it, you know. So upscale it to either 1080p or 4K would be my recommendation. I actually did some screenshot comparisons. I upscaled it in 1080p and then I upscaled it in 4K, and I took screenshots of both. And I looked at them back to back in my image editor, and I could see a minute amount of more clarity, but it wasn't super noticeable. The next category here is texture replacement. This is if you would want to use something, I guess, a way to replace actual textures in these games and upscale them that way directly by modifying textures. We're not doing any of that, but it looks like that's a possibility, which is cool. Here you can try to do more sharpening and add FXAA, which is not a great anti-aliasing method, in my opinion. And mess with TV filters and whatnot if you want to put some scan lines on there and make it look old school. I'm leaving all this off for default. I'm not messing with that. OSD on-screen display. I did turn show on-screen display messages off. This would be checked by default. So when you like do safe stating or screenshotting, a message pops up and tells you what you just did. Basically, if I'm using safe state in the game, which I will be, or possibly, yeah, be using in this game, which, you know, I'm not going to deny or hide that I'm going to be using it. If nothing else, to help me in gameplay, but also to help me in game crashing and just, you know, being able to recover where I was for recording purposes. I will be using quick saves. But for the case of that, and not to disguise it from you guys, I unchecked show on-screen display messages so that that message would not pop up. It says down here, shows on-screen display messages when events occur, such as safe stating, being created, loaded, screenshots being taken, etc. Just what I said. So I did uncheck that so they don't show, not so that I can hide the fact that I'm safe stating, because I am going to be doing it, and I'm telling you I am. It's actually in the description of the first gameplay video that I will be using safe states. I'm doing it just to present the video better so it doesn't look tacky, you know, that you see the emulator telling you what's happening and stuff. That's why I'm hiding it. It just doesn't look good. So that's the way to do it. I actually had to figure out a way to do that when I played the game Hotel Dusk. If you watch that, I recommend you look that up and watch that on my channel if you haven't. I think you'll enjoy it. It's a super chill piano jazz, super chill game. I love that game. I can't wait to play the sequel of it for you guys, and just to play another what do they call those, visual novel adventure point and click investigation, solve the murder type games. Those are really cool. I like those. But anyway, I suggest you check that out. But in that game I had to like hack, I did. I had to hack and mod part of the emulator itself to get it to do something like this. But luckily this one has a checkbox. And the other things you can do in here, you can do a lot of things. You can show your frame rate if you don't have another means to do that. GPU usage. I show special indicators for certain things like pausing the game and whatnot. And then warn about unsafe settings. That's definitely keep that checked. So a few things like that, but the key point is this one here, if you want to show or don't show messages, depending on if that bothers you or not, and it does me. And then recording through PCSX2 if you want to try to do that. I'm not using this to record my videos. So I am using NVIDIA GeForce Experience or Shadow Play or whatever it's called. Alright guys, so that'll pretty much cover it. And as I mentioned, go through the other settings here and adjust those accordingly to your liking. But definitely pay attention to some of these settings in the interface, and then use my settings here. Let me flip through them again so you can see. Use my settings here as a baseline. And I didn't change anything in these last four, except for the show OSD messages. And this should get you some pretty good results if in this game and other games, but every game is going to have its own adjustments that'll need to be made or considered. So each time I play a game through PCSX2 or others, I'll probably do a segment like this, explaining these settings over and over again, but then showing you any differences that need to be made specifically for that game. Alright, so that'll cover, let's get back here. That'll cover any of the settings here, and we will get back to the rest of the video here. Thank you for watching. Okay guys, welcome back to the Config and Tech video for Fatal Frame 1. We're going to continue on here in my little script, if you can call it that. More like cat scratches, just notes. So you should have, you know, PCSX2 roughly figured out now. Installed, configured, set up accordingly for the game. I'm going to leave you guys, get down here, I'm going to leave you guys some wiki information here. These are links that I will place in this video's description. And the first one will be to the PCSX2 compatibility page. This will show you a list of PlayStation 2 games and their compatibility standing with PCSX2. I did find in looking up the first three Fatal Frame games, Fatal Frame 1 and 3 are listed in playable in green, which is what you want it to be. And Fatal Frame 2 is not even listed in the compatibility page, but I searched the next link that I'm going to give you here, and I looked up the game directly on this wiki for playing them through PCSX2, and there is a page for Fatal Frame 2, and it does say that it's green and playable as well. It's just not been included or updated. So take that for what it's worth, that what you search for in the compatibility list may not be there, or it may, but just because it isn't doesn't mean the game won't work or isn't playable. In either case, you'd want to go to the next link, which is PlayStation 2 Games Wiki, PCSX2. This will allow you to search for a given game's wiki for fixes, and these are where I found the common issues this game has, and I tried to break them down a little further to help people work through them and understand them in more detail. Because, you know, it's one thing to read something, it's another to be told, and it's a completely different thing to be shown. So, and I included some of my own, you know, fixes for issues I encountered myself, you know, that aren't necessarily explained on that page. But that's where I'm gathering the current issues that exist for these games that I'm playing, you know, through PCSX2. Then the next link here is Fatal Frame 1 Wiki PCSX2. This will take you, this will be like going to this link here and searching for it. Will take you directly to, I just wanted to give you this link so you could search any game you want, but this will take you directly to the Fatal Frame 1 that I referenced. So that'll cover the wikis here. Let's get down here. So that covers all of that stuff with PCSX2. Hopefully that helped you guys out. Now we will go over the in-game settings, explaining and showing how to configure them. There's not many for this particular game. So the first category or setting you're going to have here is controls. And you'll have a type A through H layout to pick for your gamepad that you're going to be playing with. And by the way, this game is a PlayStation 2 game, but since I'm playing this through an emulator on my PC, I'm actually using a Xbox One controller, I think. So I have to get used to the different button layout because of the different button scheme, you know, that they use. So this is an A through H layout for the PlayStation controller. Basically, it's sets A through D are similar and sets E through H are similar. There's like two different character movement controls. I forget what they're called at the moment until we look at the game. One of them is really hard to control and the other one is fine. So I'll tell you about that when we go over controls. But basically, that's why there's two sets of 4, because there's 8 total sets. And it's basically A through D, a set of 4 for one movement scheme, and then E through H, another set of 4 for another movement scheme. And I recommend the default type A layout. And I will cover controls during gameplay. Next category of settings is vibration. Put this on. The vibration effect in the gamepad is something that is well utilized in the Fatal Frame series, so I highly recommend that you leave it on. And if it's not working for you, try to figure out how to get it working, because it definitely adds to the game. Next category would be sound, and you have an option of stereo or mono, so stereo, of course. Next category is volume. By default, the game doesn't set the slider to 100%, so crank it up to the max. Once you save your game, it will store your settings. I think it's at like 80% or something. Next category and last category is brightness, and this will take you to a reference image. You'll need to adjust your TV monitor directly for this setting, because you can't adjust it within the game. So in the next video, we'll get into the gameplay. We'll finish this video by going into the game so you can see a visual representation of the options that we just went over here. So a quick edit cut here, and I will see you there. Bye. Hello everybody, welcome to the in-game portion of the Config and Tech video for Fatal Frame 1. I just wanted to run down the 5 settings here you have basically in the game. So on controls here, type A is what I'm going to be using when I play for you guys here on YouTube. It's the default and what I recommend. The white represents the third person controls, and the orange represents the camera mode. So you kind of have two sets of controls that you have to juggle, depending on the perspective. So type A uses objective movement, and you look at type B here. Take screenshots of these, pause the video if you'd like to see what the controls are. Type B switches it from objective movement to subjective, and I find subjective movement hard to control, but once we're in the game, I will show you the difference between the two. And but A is going to be normal movement, I would say. And you got C, which is basically A, but switches a few things on the right side. Type D. Type E. It says I view operation reversed. Type F. Type G. Type H. And then it wraps back to A. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, 4 normal type and then 4 reverse type with the movement difference. So generally in a game that gives you options like this, A is going to be your best bet to start with. Try playing with that, and if you have issues or don't like how it feels, then look into change into a different type. Next option is vibration, whether you want that to be on or off. And in testing it here, it vibrates whenever I put it from off back to on. And I advise you to use it. Sound, you get stereo mono option. Volume, here's where it starts by default, but you can push it all the way up, which I recommend you do. I'll leave it here just for the volume levels of this video, but when we start the gameplay, I'll maximize it in-game. So raise that all the way to the top. And then brightness, it just gives you this image of your character here. And then 4 different ghosts, 3, excuse me, in the image there in the corners. And it says adjust the brightness on your TV to see all 4 people in the photo. So just adjust it accordingly until you can see the character clearly. And you can see the 3 ghost apparitions there. You can barely see number 4, but I think probably number 4 is intended to be the darkest thing they want visible, whereas 1 is the brightest thing. So you can't do anything from within the game, you just have to do it on your screen. But that's your reference. And then you return back to the main menu from here. So that basically covers all the settings. Just wanted to show that to you guys, and for those that are interested, if nothing else, it at least shows the control scheme that the game offers, which is a lot. Most games don't give you that many different control schemes to pick through. So thank you very much for watching this portion of the Config and Tech video, and I will see you in the next part, where we will get into the first gameplay video.